A few weeks ago, I sat behind this microphone and shared one of the hardest weeks I'd experienced in a pretty long time. I told you that everything I thought this summer was going to be had changed within 48 hours. And I remember saying something that has stayed with me ever since. I said, I don't know how this story ends. The truth is, I was looking for an ending. What I got was another chapter. Today's episode isn't about having answers, it's about what remains when life changes you. And I have a feeling that every single one of us has a story like that. So today, I'd love to talk about it. Welcome to the Rise to Shine podcast with Noelle Custis, where we ignite the spark to discover your favorite self. It is time to get real, ladies. Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Rise to Shine podcast. I'm your host, Noelle Custis, someone who is sitting down behind this microphone today feeling very different than I did just a few short weeks ago. If you listen to my episode, it happens to be episode 116. It was about tiny returns and how to keep showing up when everything falls apart. You know that I shared a very real, very vulnerable conversation with you. And it wasn't polished. I had no makeup on, didn't have my hair done. It wasn't wrapped up neatly at all. Actually, I remember saying that I didn't even know what the ending was going to be. And I didn't know what God was doing at the time. I didn't know why my glow up school launch hadn't unfolded, if you will, the way that I had hoped for. I didn't know why everything seemed to just be unraveling just as I arrived. My family and I, we had just arrived at the beach for what I thought was going to be a season of rest and fun and vibrance. And I remember telling you, I guess we'll see. Life had another chapter waiting. That's the only way that I'm able to articulate it and say it. And since recording that episode, my father-in-law ended up passing away. Even saying those words still feel really strange to me. I feel like some days it feels really real. And then other days I still catch myself saying like, oh, I want to tell my father-in-law that, or, oh, I need to tell Pops that. That's what we always called him. Or even just questioning, how is this real? I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this is our truth and that this is our reality. And grief is really weird like that. It doesn't always make sense. And it just almost like quietly becomes part of our days. And honestly, I'm still learning how to carry it. Before I got on, my husband is not here right now. And right before I got on to record, I literally sent him a picture and I said, honey, I said, look, I actually have my eyelashes on. I promise I'm not going to be slumming it for the rest of the summer. And he's like, it's all good, babe. And you look great. I have been so grateful for him and his grace through all of this. But I just feel like, I'm learning again, I'm learning how to carry it. I'm not here to overcome it. I know everybody keeps telling me, make sure you feel it, make sure you're resting, all of the things. Just, I'm just learning to carry it because I don't think, no, I know that love, it just doesn't leave us. I think it changes perhaps the way that it lives inside of us, but it doesn't leave. And before I get into telling you about everything this season has been teaching me, I want to just honor Pops just for a minute. I feel like I can't do this episode justice if you don't know a little bit about him. And I don't think you can understand this story unless you understand him. So if you'll just indulge me for a few minutes, I'd love to tell you about one of the greatest gifts God ever gave me. So, when I was 8 years old, some of you know this, my dad died. And even now, saying that out loud feels surreal because the way he died was something none of us could have imagined back then. People still don't believe me when I tell them now, but he was actually struck by lightning. I was 8 years old. That's all I was. My brother was 5. And if you've ever lost a parent as a child, you know that life gets divided into two parts. There's the before and there's the after. And there is an ache. That's the only way I can explain it. There's an ache that just never quite leaves. It's just always kind of lingering. And there's always this kind of space that never quite gets filled, if that makes sense. And as a little girl, I didn't have language for that. I didn't. I just knew that something really important had been taken away. And then years later, fast forward during my senior year of high school, life asked me to say goodbye again. And that's when my grandpa passed away. Anybody that knows me knows that this is one of the hardest times of my life. He was literally one of my favorite people. He was a safe space for me. He was a father figure to me. And I still remember that day like it was yesterday. It was the second day of my senior year. So it's kind of weird because my son is literally going through the same experience with his grandpa. Same age, all the things, like going into a senior year. It's kind of wild. But everyone else was, of course, it's your senior year. Everybody's starting to begin one of the most exciting seasons of their lives. And I was saying goodbye to a man who had quietly held so much of my life together for all of those years. And it just felt like another piece of my heart left with him. And I remember wondering, will I ever know that kind of love again? Will I ever have another father figure in my life? At that point, my mom had remarried and had gotten divorced. And so that's kind of where I was. And then God did something I could have never planned, right? About a year later, so I was 19, I met a family. And in that family was a man we all called Pops. I didn't know it then, but over the next 34 years, he would become literally my dad. Not biologically, but in every way that mattered. He never had to choose me, but he did over and over again. And there's one thing you'll hear me say throughout this episode, and it is this: the people who change our lives the most are rarely the loudest. They're the ones who consistently just choose the love. And that's who Pop was to me. He wasn't really flashy. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was just being him. He was simply living this legacy. And it was every single day. Like, he was so cool. Everyone who knew him knows that he was so cool. And here's where the story becomes even more extraordinary. And this is where I really wanted to just share with you that years later, after having my kids, life took our family in a direction that none of us really expected to go. And after 19 years of being with his son, my former husband and I divorced. And I don't know. If you've walked through divorce, you know how complicated those seasons can become because all the families kind of shift and sometimes your traditions start to really change. People drift apart. I mean, it's just naturally how things go. But here is what never changed. Pops. He never stopped loving me. He never stopped being grandpa to my children. He never stopped making me feel like family. And when I met Andy and remarried, Pops welcomed him with the same exact kindness, the grace, the unconditional love that he always had shown me. He never, ever, along with his wife, my former mother-in-law, I want to give her credit too, he never made Andy feel like an outsider. He simply just expanded his circle. That's just who he was. I can't tell you how many people have been reaching out to us saying he was like a dad to me. I mean, it really is his truth. He taught me something without ever saying the words, that love isn't something we ration. Love expands. It makes room. It chooses people again and again. And when I look back now, I realize how incredibly rare that is. Not everyone gets to experience that unconditional love. Not everyone gets to say that someone continued choosing them even after life became really, really complicated. And I do get to say that. And I don't take that gift lightly. Sometimes I find myself thinking, what are the chances? Honestly, a little girl loses her dad at 8 years old. She loses her grandpa as a teenager. And then God places another father in her life for the next 34 years. And I'm not going to pretend to understand all of God's timing. I don't pretend to even really have answers for why some stories unfold the way that they do, but I know this for sure. Pops was one of the greatest gifts that God ever gave me. And I think one of the reasons this loss has shaken me so deeply is because I wasn't just saying goodbye to my father-in-law. I was actually saying goodbye to my dad. And that is my truth. And, as I've reflected on this life, or his life, I should say, the last few weeks, because it's been a few weeks since we've been going through the process. He passed 1 week ago. I just really realized something is that Pops didn't have to convince people that he loved them. No one really questioned it. We just knew because he would just show up. He would choose people. He would love well. I have the best picture of him and my daughter. She was his first grandchild and she was a girl, obviously. And they were like playing dress up. He would play princess dress up with her and they would get in all of her boas and her crowns and all the things. And that's just who he was. And I know that, and I am going to say this, I know that not everything always feels perfect for some people. But this was my truth, and this was my kid's truth, that this is who he was to us. And I have found myself also asking a different question because of him, not what did he accomplish or, how successful was he? But how did people feel because they knew him? Because I think that is the real measure of a life, not what we accumulate, not what we build, not the titles that we carry, you guys, but it's who feels more loved because we were here. Who feels more loved because we were here? I just haven't been able to stop thinking about that because maybe that's the kind of legacy we're all actually building, whether we realize it or not. And here's another thing I keep coming back to is how quickly life can change. Oh man, we say it, but when we're actually living, it's profound. And I think that sometimes we live in this quiet assumption that tomorrow will look a lot like today. I think that sometimes we think like, oh, next month it's probably going to look like what this month looks like. The people that we love, they're just here. And we take it for granted, not on purpose, but then one day they aren't. And then for real, everything changes. And I really thought about that last episode that I recorded. I remember sitting here talking to you about all of those things. I was talking to you about the glow up school. I was talking to you about what had happened with him and how he was in the hospital. And I was talking about how the glow up school launch hadn't gone the way that I hoped, how I was trying to make sense of all of it. And I'm going to be very honest. I was sitting here recording that and I felt a lot of disappointment. I felt like everything that I thought the summer was going to be had totally shifted. And at the time, my disappointment felt really, really big. But then life reminded me that sometimes there are things that are so much bigger than our own plans. And I'm not going to lie either. In the back of my mind, I kind of just had this weird intuition when I was recording that. I had a weird intuition that I knew I was about to be facing some massive change. And then as Pop's health started to really decline, our family did what families do. We gathered, we had to make hard decisions. We sat together, we cried together, we prayed together, we laughed more than I expected. And isn't that funny too? Because that is how grief works. It has a strange way. I mean, even the day he passed, as we were sitting there with him after his soul had left, and we were all sitting in the room as a family, there were a couple of things that were said that we just couldn't help but to giggle, and it kind of broke the excruciating pain that we were going through. And, you know, you start to remember things that you hadn't remembered in years. And then, of course, since then, we've been looking through pictures, we've been hugging each other a little bit longer. And every single one of these moments remind me that this is what life is all about. And it's not because we're just saying goodbye, it's because we were together. There was nowhere else that I wanted to be. I am serious. Like I I didn't want to be anywhere. I wanted to be right there with my family. My mom and stepdad were actually here staying with us that week. And let me tell you again, greatest gift that just happened to be the week that they stayed with us. Having my mom here with me, here I was going to be spoiling her because she's a caretaker and I wanted to give her a little reprieve. And we just were there for each other. And as heartbreaking as it was, there was also something just really beautiful about the whole experience. I don't know how else to say that. And here's the thing, I have always said on this podcast that I was preparing for the hard. I just didn't know what the hard exactly was going to look like. I imagined it because I knew it would eventually come. This is why I left my teaching job. I knew that there were going to be hard days ahead, maybe not with him directly at the time, but I was very aware that we have many people in our family that are much older. And the truth of the matter is, not everyone is going to be around forever. But I think maybe I imagined it looking a little different. And then maybe that's true for all of us. We know difficult seasons are to come. We don't dread it. We don't like sit on it every day. It's not something that we, hopefully are ruminating about or anything. But we just always are kind of also hoping that, oh, that's way later down the road. But not now, not this year, not this summer. It's different. And life asks all of us to walk through something we never wanted to face. I mean, that is just the reality. And I think one of the greatest questions becomes, who have I become before I get here? So before I get to these hard places, not because we can ever fully prepare ourselves for losing someone we love, because that's just impossible, but because we can build a life that knows how to hold us when those moments come. And friends, I'm just going to tell you, this has become one of the biggest realizations of my life. I used to think the work that I was doing, like the journaling and the walks and the rhythms, all my quiet mornings, my prayer, my intentions, was about creating that beautiful life, right? And it is. I still believe that. But now I just believe that it is so much deeper. Those rhythms that I've been creating, they're not necessarily preparing me for success, right? They're preparing me for sorrow. And I know that might sound weird to some of you. It's not going to prevent anything from happening because nothing can really do that. But it's giving me somewhere to return when my world felt unsteady. So, like when I was going through all this, my world felt unsteady, but those rhythms helped me. Even though they weren't perfectly done, they still helped. And do you remember in the last episode when I told you that the rhythms were catching me? They still are every single day. And trust me when I tell you it's not because I am waking up feeling motivated about anything. Most mornings I am not. Like I said, today's probably one of the first days that I've actually worn makeup in weeks. And it's not even because I have figured out this grief thing, because ladies, I have not. It's still weird to me. I mean, I can be sitting here talking to you like this and be fine. And literally, I could stop recording this and bawl like a baby because something triggers me. But I also think I've learned something that I don't think I fully understood until now because I haven't had such a profound loss like this. The last time I had a big loss was in 2020, and that was my Aunt Cheryl. And I took that really hard, but we were expecting it. Okay. So there's just something a little differently about it. But here's the thing, when life falls apart, we don't rise to the occasion. We return to what we have been repeatedly practicing. And that has been kind of living with me a little bit in more real time, is that we return to those things that we have been doing consistently. because I just feel like I can see it more clearly now. The prayers I've prayed over the years, those are carrying me now. All these journals, literally, I'm showing journals. Like I have journals up the wazoo, and they're reminding me of who I am and all of my gratitude practice and my time with God. They have become the places of refuge instead of just feeling obligated to do them. Drinking my coffee outside on the patio is about me being able to breathe again, about also remembering the sun still rises every day. So all of that keeps somehow moving, right? I've also realized something about myself. And this kind of has surprised me a little bit because when life gets really hard, my instinct, and I think I may have even mentioned this, my instinct is really to get very small. Maybe some of you can relate to that. I have watched so many different people in our family respond to grief, and it is so different for everybody. But for me, I just want to disappear. I want to pull away. I want to answer fewer texts. I want to cancel everything. I want to wrap my arms around people I love and pretend the rest of the world can just wait. And I don't want to be a part of it. Maybe that, I don't know, that's probably how God has wired me. I like to nurture. I like to gather. I protect people. I want to hold space for people. But here's the thing, this season has also taught me something else. There is a difference between retreating and disappearing. One of those restores us, the other isolates us. Can you guess which one? Yeah. And I'm learning that I can honor my need for quiet. That always used to kind of scare me before. I used to think, oh my gosh, I'm going to fall into this like depression. But I get to still stay connected to the life that I've intentionally been building. And maybe, again, it just looks like me putting on some makeup today and hopping on a podcast instead of disappearing for months, right? Maybe it looks like asking for help instead of pretending like, no, I'm fine. I'm okay. I got this. I have not done that this time. And let me tell you, ladies, that used to be my pattern. So I have just really just been getting honest, kind of like how I am here with you today. Like I love being able to be honest about these things. And I've also become really incredibly aware of what it means to be part of what so many people call the sandwich generation. I've talked about it before on another podcast where you're loving upward, you're loving downward, you're trying to support aging parents while still showing up for your own children. You're trying to then be present for your spouse, right? You're holding space for your siblings, your brothers, your sisters. You're holding space for extended family, your friends. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, you're trying not to lose yourself. And if you're in that season, I just want to say, girl, I see you. I really do. I talk about this so much with a girlfriend of mine. We literally geek out on this all the time because she's in the thick of it as well. And it's one of the most sacred seasons of life. I'm starting to believe this. It's one of the hardest. There's no doubt about it because no one teaches us how to hold all of that at once. No one does. Oh, and just throw in the perimenopause and menopause too. Oh, yeah, that's right. That happens about this time. But what we learn is it's just one day at a time, one conversation at a time, one unfortunate goodbye at a time, one prayer at a time. That's what it is. And I can't not address the glow up school through all of this reflection because I've spent a lot of time thinking about the glow up school over the last few weeks. I know that it's weird, but you do love this simultaneous, like, you think that grief would make me stop thinking about work altogether, but actually it made me think about it just differently, if that resonates with you. Because when I launched the Glow Up School for the second time, I truly believed it was the right thing. I still believe that, honestly. I really believe that with my whole heart. But there were moments after the launch, like I said, where disappointment started getting to me. And I started thinking, maybe you just missed it. Maybe people don't want this anymore. Maybe you got it wrong. Maybe this isn't what you're supposed to do. Have you ever heard those moments? Oh my gosh, they're the worst. It's like where one disappointment suddenly makes you question every single thing in your life, not just the situation, but yourself. I'm sure we've all been there to some capacity. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that I promised myself I would always be honest with you. So, yes, I'm just admitting all those thoughts came to me. But here's what happened. As I sat in those hospital rooms, as I sat at the home that we are renting this summer, by the way, it has become our sanctuary. Had no idea that was where we were supposed to be. I watched my family gather. I listened to all the stories about Pops. We had family in from Texas that I listened to stories of my side of the family. But something just started to change for me. And I realized I don't think the glow up school was ever the problem. I think I was being invited to look deeper, not to abandon the vision altogether. As a matter of fact, I just had someone who had put down a deposit and we were going through all of that. And she just said, I really hope that you don't tuck this away. And that meant the world to me because I don't think I'm supposed to abandon the vision, but I'm supposed to understand it better. Because for the last year, I've been on this journey to getting to know myself in ways that I really haven't even known myself before. Through a lot of like the reflection and the work and, just conversations with my mentors, through human design that I'm learning a lot about, just simply paying attention to what gives me life and then also paying attention to what drains it. I'm starting to really recognize that. And I don't think that one framework, I guess that's the right word for it, like one framework has all the answers, but I believe God uniquely wired every single one of us. And the better we understand how we are wired, the better we can steward the life that we've been given. I know that I am meant to gather people. I've known that for a really long time. I love creating different kinds of communities. I love bringing women together. I love watching strangers become friends. I love creating these spaces where people feel safe enough to just exhale. But something else has become really, really clear to me. I'm also meant to teach, and I've known that. I've known I'm supposed to educate and I'm supposed to help people connect dots, but I know I'm also supposed to ask the deeper questions and to create conversations that aren't just sitting here and inspiring people, but actually changing the way that we live. And so when I look back now, I can see those threads throughout the last several years, like in such a big, profound way. And just like teaching wasn't random for me. Coaching, becoming a life coach wasn't random for me. Hosting events, not random. Starting this podcast, not random. Creating the Glow Up School wasn't random. None of it was. The pieces have always been there. I'm just beginning to see the picture kind of more clearly. And maybe that's what this season has been giving me. Not really like I'm not feeling at this point, now this could all change, but I'm not feeling that I have this like new calling per se. I just feel like I am getting way more clear, lots more clarity. And one of the biggest other lessons that I've learned this week is that sometimes disappointment isn't actually a closed door. Sometimes it's just this invitation to slow down long enough to notice that maybe there were things that we weren't seeing as we were like running through life, right? Maybe if the glow up school had exploded overnight, would I have been able to be fully present with Pops? Would I have been able to spend long days in the hospital? Because let me tell you, I spent some long days there. Would I have been emotionally available for my family? I don't know. And I don't pretend to know God's timing and how that all works. But looking back, I'm grateful that I wasn't carrying both at the same time because that would have put so much more pressure on me. I would have felt so much more guilty that I wasn't giving the women exactly what I wanted to give them. So I'm grateful, I guess, in a way that I wasn't trying to lead several women while basically my own heart was completely breaking and my kids' hearts were breaking. I'm grateful instead that I had this capacity to simply be where I needed to be. And maybe that's what the trust looks like. Not understanding all the things, just recognizing that sometimes the story just makes more sense in reverse when we're able to look in hindsight than it does while we're actually living it. And that's why in that last podcast, I was saying, I don't know how this story ends. I don't know why this is happening. And now I think it's starting to make a little bit more sense. And can I ask you something? Have you ever looked back and felt massive disappointment and then only to realize later, oh, it was actually for protection, or it was for preparation, or simply just perfect timing, even though you couldn't see it then? And maybe you're even in one of those seasons right now. I have no idea. Maybe you're sitting there questioning, why didn't that work? Why did that relationship end? Why did that job not happen for me? Why does this dream feel so delayed? Like, hello, come on. I know it's for me, right? Well, that's where I just want to gently encourage you. Please don't let one season convince you that your vision is wrong. Maybe it's just about being refined because I know I'm being refined for sure. I don't think I'm building a different business. I think I'm just maybe becoming a different leader, one who I feel like is going to understand that success isn't measured by the launches. It's measured by presence, by integrity. Ugh, integrity, by loving so well, by creating something that can outlive me, right? And maybe that's what part of Pops being in my life has been teaching me all along without ever really saying those words. I feel like that's what I was taught because I do believe that everyone is in our lives for a reason. And that's more of what I want. So the truth is, I still believe in the glow up school. I totally do, but maybe more deeply than I did before, just in a different perspective. Not because I even still have all the answers, because I don't like at this point, but I feel like I'm understanding the heart behind it more clearly. And I also simultaneously realize that I'm not just here to help women feel more confident or more productive or more successful. Those things are all awesome. I love those things, and that is part of my work, but they're not the deepest work. The deepest work is helping women build lives that can actually hold them, lives that are actually built on rhythms. Yes, we have to go regulate our hormones. Yes, you might want to get on all the peptides. And yes, we've got to, but our health is all part of that. I am not a doctor, right? I'm not pretending to be. So that is not my expertise, but my expertise is helping you to live a life built on some of those rhythms, on faith, on community, on knowing who you are, on creating spaces where you get to breathe, where you can heal, where you can remember yourself again, because all of that has mattered in my journey for sure. Because every single one of us is going to be asked to live through hard things. That is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I want every woman who crosses my path to know that when that day comes, she doesn't have to lose herself in it. She can have something to come home to again and again and again. As a matter of fact, the other day, I found myself sitting quietly with all of this, just kind of thinking about it all. I wasn't like writing a podcast. I wasn't journaling. I wasn't even like doing any kind of like agenda, nothing. I was just sitting in silence. That's all I was doing. And I kept asking myself, what is it that I'm actually grieving? Of course, I'm grieving Pops. Of course. I'm grieving that empty chair that I see in his house. I am grieving that I can't make that phone call ever again. I'm grieving the stories and the jokes that I don't get to hear. All of the holidays that are going to change and they're going to feel different. But when I was kind of sitting with that question, I'm also grieving the absence of a presence that made everyone around him feel safe. Have you ever, who is it that you know? Have you ever met someone like that? Do you have someone in your life like that? It's that kind of person that just kind of walks into a room and immediately makes you go, ah, the kind of person who doesn't need to be the loudest person in the room, right? Doesn't need to have all the attention, but that kind of person who makes you feel important simply because they're fully present with you. That was Pops. That was him. I don't even think he was trying to purposely leave a legacy. He was just living it. It was just like, I don't know. We just had conversations. We just had dinners. We had hugs. We had laughs. It's the decision to keep choosing people, choosing the people that we love. And then that is when something really hit me because I've been really big about legacy because I've known deep in my heart that's something that is important to me is legacy and to be intentional about that. But it's not built in these like grandiose moments. It's built in all of these ordinary things that we do together. My mom said something that was profound, and she said, I see all of these pictures and I think, wow, I'm kind of mad at myself that I didn't jump in on all of those pictures with the grandkids when they were growing up because I was more concerned about how I looked. But when I am looking at what your kids get to post about their grandpa, she was like, I am not going to miss out on those pictures anymore because I want your kids to be able to remember me because our legacies are built on a random Tuesday when you finally decide like, oh, I'm going to listen to this or, oh, I'm going to take the pictures. It's built when your child walks through the door and you put down your phone. It's built when your spouse has had a really hard day and you choose compassion over criticism. It's built when you forgive. It's built when you stay. It's built when you show up. When you love people consistently enough that they never have to question where they stand with you, that is part of your legacy. When it's not about you, it's about how you make people feel when they leave. It's about how you show up. Pops never made me wonder, ever. Not once. Not once. And that was such a gift. I think we spend so much of our lives trying to build these successful lives that we sometimes forget that we're simultaneously building a remembered life. Think about that for a second. Every conversation you have, every ordinary day, every single interaction, we're leaving fingerprints on people's hearts. Some fingerprints heal, some wound, some are forgotten, some are carried for a lifetime. Pops left fingerprints on my heart that 34 years later are still shaping the woman that I am becoming. And he's not the only one. I'm specifically talking about him, but I am so lucky to have so many family members in my life that do that and friends. What an unbelievable gift. And it makes me wonder, what fingerprints am I leaving? Not just for my children, not just for Andy, not just for my family, but for every woman I have the privilege of walking beside. When someone leaves one of my events, what do I hope they remember? I'm not hoping that they remember all the decorations or, maybe I created a workbook for them or we had some great snacks. I hope they remember how they felt. When someone listens to this podcast, I don't care if you remember every single word I said. I just hope that you feel less alone. I hope that you feel seen. I hope that you feel hopeful again. Maybe you're remembering something about yourself that you had forgotten. Because at the end of the day, I really don't think it's the information that changes lives. I think feeling loved is what changes lives. I think feeling seen changes people's lives. And you know what's interesting? Here's what's interesting. I have spent several years asking women, what kind of life do you want to build? Lately, I've been asking myself a different question. And that is, what kind of person do I want to become while I am building it? Because here's what part of this grief has shown me, and I know I'm going to learn so much more through this process. Life isn't going to be about reaching the destination. It's about the version of you that people get to experience along the way. So maybe that's the real glow up. not becoming someone completely different, becoming someone who loves more deeply, someone who is listening more carefully and forgives more quickly, who notices the beauty in the hidden moments or the ordinary days, who creates a home that feels safe, tables where I feel like everybody gets to belong, communities where people get to exhale. Maybe that's what we're really searching for, just belonging. So I don't know. I guess some questions I would say to just maybe consider as, we start to wrap this up is who's been a person like that for you? Who's changed your life simply by just loving you well? Maybe it was a parent, maybe it was a friend or a grandparent, maybe it was one of your teachers, maybe you have a coach, maybe it's someone that's no longer here. And I'm going to ask you this, when was the last time you thanked them? Or if they're no longer here, when's the last time you intentionally honored them and maybe lived out something that they taught you? Because I think that one of the most beautiful ways we honor people is by not just remembering them, but by becoming more like the best parts of them. And let me tell you, I've been thinking about that with my own kids. They're 24 and 17 now. And as every parent knows, years go much faster than we can ever imagine. And I don't know if they're going to remember every single vacation and birthday party and Christmas, but I hope that they remember how home felt for them. I hope they remember they never questioned whether they were loved. I hope they remember the laughter. And I want them to know the grace and the presence and the safety. I want them to take the best parts of their grandpa and live that out in their lives. Because again, that's what I want to remember about our pops. Not what he owned. I don't care about all that stuff. I just remember how he made me feel. And that is what I feel like maybe that's what we all want, to leave this world knowing that the people entrusted to us felt deeply loved because we were here. Friends, life is so flippin' fragile. We all know that. But again, somehow as we live through that and we have more conversations, maybe there's more holidays and, more phone calls, take the opportunity to say, I love you. Don't wait. That's one thing I know for sure. Tell people what they mean to you. Show up for people. Forgive people. Don't hold grudges. Choose presence. Yes, there are times that we have to slow down, and there's times that we're sad, and there's times that we have just big things that we're going through. But take the time to laugh around the dinner table. Take the picture. Like my mom said, give the hug, sit on the porch, ask the deeper questions. Because one day, those little ordinary moments become the memories that are going to sustain us or sustain our kids forever. And then that is what becomes our own legacy. And I know I've said it a few times through the episode. I don't think that there was ever maybe supposed to be an ending, just another chapter, just another season. And I think that's true for all of us. Life is just going to keep inviting us into new seasons, new chapters. And some of it we're going to pray for, and others we're going to not be happy that we have to go through them. We don't choose to lose our people, but every single one of them has something to teach us. Life is incredibly fragile. It's taught me that our plans matter, but our people matter more. It's taught me that my work, it's always going to be here. The emails are still going to be waiting. The laundry, it'll eventually get folded at some point. I did fold it the other day. The launch can happen another day, and that's okay. But the opportunity to sit by someone you love, to hold their hand, to tell the stories, to laugh, to cry, those moments are the sacred ones. And once they're gone, they are gone. They'll still be around in a different way, but not the physical way. And it's also reminded me why I do what I do. For a long time, I thought, again, it was about just all of the other things, the confidence and all of that. But I don't know. I think I've just really tapped into something deeper. And I think it's just about being so rooted and so connected and so intentional that when life asks of more of us, we don't have to lose ourselves because life, it's going to ask more of us. And that's not me talking out of fear. That's just being human. There's going to be diagnosis. There's going to be heartbreak. There's going to be more loss. I know that. There's going to be more disappointment. There's going to be these unexpected pivots, you guys. There's going to be seasons where nothing seems like what we're living is what we had planned. But there can also be the rhythms. There can be all the things we talked about before with the community. I know I don't have all the answers, but I just know what it feels like to need someone to sit beside you and simply say, me too. Yeah. Okay. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know I often say that your best day is waiting for you. Today, I'm just going to say why I say that and explain what I've meant by that. And it doesn't mean every day is easy. It doesn't mean life will always go according to plan. We clearly know that. It doesn't mean there won't be unimaginable grief. But what it means is this: as long as we're still here, there is beauty to notice. I keep telling my kids that. There's still someone to love. There's still healing available. I promise we will get through this. You will get through this on the other side. There is still purpose. There's still another sunrise. There's still laughter, even if you haven't heard it in a while. There still can be laughter at your dinner table. There's still a child who needs a hug, a friend who needs a phone call. When they say you're having the hardest time, go out and serve. Not because you want to make money, but because you actually want to serve from your heart. I promise that changes your heart. There is still life, you guys. And I know that Pop would totally want me to keep living it. He wants his kids to keep living it, his grandkids, his wife, fully, joyfully, with gratitude. And he knows that that's not leaving him behind. It's just carrying his legacy and creating that, taking him with us everywhere we go. So his love is going to continue. I'm so grateful for that. And it was all because I got to experience it and now I get to pass it on. And again, I just keep saying, thank you. Such a gift. So before we say goodbye today, I'd love to leave you with a few questions. Again, not because you have to answer them, but just remember, have you told that person you loved them? Have you forgiven someone that maybe you need to forgive? If they're still here, I'm telling you, don't wait. Have those conversations. Don't be stubborn. If they're not here, just think about what can you do to honor them today. So maybe it's their generosity, their patience. Oh gosh, you guys, I feel like I'm starting to circle and I'm starting to say it over and over again. But one last question I want to ask: when people walk away from you, how do they feel? Do they feel heard? Do they feel seen? Do they feel encouraged? Do they feel safe? Do they leave believing in themselves a little more because they spent time with you? I think that's the question I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life, because at the end of it all, I don't think people are going to remember how busy we were, how successful we became, all of the things that we own. Yeah, those are all satisfying for us here on this earth. But again, I think they're going to remember how we made them feel, whether they felt loved and that they belonged and that we weren't just here to live our lives for ourselves. We had a purpose and they mattered. So, Pops, thank you. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for loving my children. Thank you for showing us what family really looks like. And thank you for welcoming Andy with open arms. Thank you for proving that love is always bigger than circumstances. And thank you for teaching me that legacy isn't something we leave behind. It's something we get to live out every single day. Seriously, Pops, you changed my life. And I promise I am going to spend the rest of mine helping other people feel the way that you made me feel: safe, seen, loved. And I hope someday that will be my legacy too. So friends, thank you for letting me share this chapter with you. It has been one of the hardest few weeks that I've experienced in a really long time, but very clarifying. And I think there are a lot of people that are quietly carrying something heavy right now. So maybe this just needs to be a reminder that you're not alone. If you have finished listening to this, please go hug your people. Stay a little longer at the dinner table tonight. Yeah, do all those things. Oh, you guys. Thanks. Thanks for letting me just vent this out. All right, my friends, until next time, keep rising, keep shining, and know your best day is right here waiting for you. Bye, friends. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining me here today. Your presence means the world to me. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider leaving a rating and review, and don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Head to the show notes and let's connect. Rise to Shine Co. is ready to support you in coaching, collaboration, life tips, or even a coffee chat. Until next time, keep shining, my friends.